The most important human who ever lived might be someone who drank something they definitely should not have. 13,000 years ago, in a cave, someone found grain that had been sitting in water too long. It smelled strange. It looked bubbly. Something had clearly happened to it, and against every survival instinct a sensible animal should have, they drank it anyway. That single, reckless sip may have set humanity on a path toward everything. Agriculture, cities, religion, writing, the entire shape of human society. So when did humans first drink alcohol? And why did we ever start? The answer goes back much further than you think. And it doesn't start with humans at all. It starts with monkeys. Were humans built to handle alcohol in the first place? For most animals, the answer is no. Most creatures that drink ethanol fall over, get sick, or die. Humans and our primate cousins have a special enzyme called ADH4 that breaks down alcohol with surprising efficiency. And here's the part that should stop you cold. That enzyme didn't show up when we invented wine. It didn't show up with farming. It appeared roughly 10 million years ago. 10 million. That's before humans existed, before any creature you'd recognize as human walked the earth. It emerged right when our ancestors were climbing down from the trees and spending more time on the ground. Which means, for 10 million years, long before we ever chose to drink, our bodies were already getting ready for the relationship. A biologist at UC Berkeley named Robert Dudley spent 25 years trying to explain why, and his theory has, possibly, the greatest name in the history of science: the drunken monkey hypothesis. The idea is beautifully simple. Our primate ancestors ate fruit, enormous amounts of it, and when fruit gets perfectly ripe, it begins to ferment. Wild yeast lands on the fruit, eats the sugar inside, and produces alcohol. The fruit starts to smell, faintly, of booze. So every time an ancient primate found perfectly ripe fruit, it was also finding a little bit of alcohol. And here's the genius part. That alcohol smell wasn't a warning. It was a signal. It meant, this fruit is at maximum ripeness, maximum sugar, maximum calories. Eat it now, before it's gone. The ancestors who were drawn to that smell got more food, survived longer, had more children, and passed that craving down the line. Over millions of years, a love of the smell and taste of alcohol got baked into the primate brain. We were literally shaped by evolution to enjoy the smell of booze. This isn't a weakness. It's 10 million years of evolution, working exactly as designed. And this isn't just a nice theory. It's been tested. Researchers in Panama studied wild spider monkeys and collected the exact fruit these animals chose to eat. That fruit regularly contained 1 to 2% alcohol, naturally, just from ripening. Then they tested the monkey's urine and found the breakdown products of alcohol. Proof the animals weren't just eating it, they were metabolizing it. And chimpanzees in the Ivory Coast, their normal daily fruit diet could expose them to the equivalent of 1 or 2 human drinks every single day. So your ancient ancestor was getting a mild buzz in the forest 10 million years ago and had absolutely no idea. But at some point, the story changes. At some point, a human doesn't just stumble onto fermented food by accident. They decide to make it on purpose. This is an enormous leap. It requires observation, memory, the ability to notice what happened to that grain last time it got wet, and to deliberately do it again. It requires, basically, science. So when did that leap happen? The oldest confirmed evidence sits inside a cave in Israel, Rockfet Cave, a burial site used by a people called the Natufians, hunter-gatherers who lived around 13,000 years ago. And these people were not primitive. They buried their dead with flowers. They kept dogs as companions. They were smart and socially complex. Inside their burial cave, researchers found stone mortars, carved bowls that still held residue after 13,000 years. A Stanford team analyzed it, and the picture was unmistakable. They had been making beer. Not some vague fermented mush. Beer. From wheat and barley, made through a 3-step brewing process. Now here's the part that should quietly short-circuit your brain. This predates agriculture. The Natufians were not farmers. They didn't grow crops. They gathered wild grain. And instead of eating all of it, they used some to deliberately make beer for their dead. Did humans settle down and start farming because they wanted reliable grain for bread? Or because they wanted reliable grain for beer? Think about it. Why would a nomad, living a perfectly good life following food with the seasons, suddenly decide to stay in one place, break up the ground, plant seeds, and wait months for them to grow? What makes that trade worth it? Beer. A guaranteed, reliable supply of beer. Something calorie-rich, safer than the local water. Something to share at feasts, to honor the dead, to mark the sacred moments of life. It's still debated. Many archaeologists think bread came first, but the Natufian discovery gave the beer theory powerful new evidence, because here were people brewing before farming existed anywhere on Earth. After the Natufians, the evidence starts appearing everywhere, from totally separate corners of the world. In China, 9,000 years ago, researchers found pottery holding a fermented drink of rice, honey, and hawthorn fruit, basically an ancient cocktail. In the country of Georgia, 8,000 years ago, the oldest confirmed wine in the world. Georgians will tell you, with complete justification, that they invented wine. And honestly, there's no arguing with them. And in China again, the earliest known fermentation starters, a technique still used today to make sake and other drinks. 9,000 years of unbroken tradition. These cultures were not in contact. They weren't trading recipes. They each discovered fermentation entirely on their own, within the same window of human prehistory, which means alcohol isn't a lucky accident that happened once and spread. It's something humans discover every single time, given grain or fruit and a little curiosity. We are, as a species, fundamentally fermentation curious. Then came the civilization that turned alcohol into a full bureaucratic system. Mesopotamia, the land where writing was invented, and, perhaps not by coincidence, some of the very first things ever written down were records about beer. Sumerian workers were paid in beer. This wasn't a casual bonus. It was the system. Build a temple, copy a tablet, dig a canal. You got beer. About 2 liters a day for an average worker. They even gave beer rations to the dead for the journey into the afterlife, because apparently, death was no reason to interrupt a reasonable daily ration. They loved beer so much they made a goddess of it, Ninkasi, the lady who fills the mouth. And around 1800 BC, someone wrote a hymn to her that secretly contains a step-by-step brewing recipe. In 1989, a modern brewer actually followed it. The beer worked. It tasted like champagne mixed with dates. 38 centuries later. And then, my favorite detail, the Code of Hammurabi, one of the oldest law codes in history, includes rules about beer. If you watered down your beer in ancient Babylon, the punishment was being thrown into the river. Humanity's first great legal code included consumer protection for beer. In Egypt, the story takes a turn. The workers who built the pyramids, not slaves, as research has long established, were paid in beer and bread. It was the foundation of their diet and their wages. Egyptian beer was thick, nutritious, and low in alcohol. And in a land where the Nile could carry disease, fermented beer was often genuinely safer than water. Beer was, in a real sense, public health. Wine, though, was prestige. For the elite. For the gods. For the tombs of pharaohs. Sealed wine jars and royal tombs were labeled with the vintage year, the vineyard, even the name of the winemaker. The world's oldest wine labels, sealed in the dark for 3,000 years. And here's the thread running through all of it. The Natufians, Sumer, Egypt, ancient China. In every culture, the earliest alcohol is tied to the sacred, to death, to burial, to offerings and prayers. From the very beginning, alcohol was never just about having a good time. It was about marking the moments that matter most. So, when did ancient humans first drink alcohol? The answer spans an almost unimaginable stretch of time. The biology, the enzyme that lets us handle alcohol, the craving that draws us to it, was set 10 million years ago in the primate ancestors we share with every ape and monkey alive. The first intentional brewing, 13,000 years ago, in a cave by hunter-gatherers who made beer to honor their dead. And then the spread, independently, simultaneously, across China, Georgia, Mesopotamia, Egypt, and beyond. An unbroken chain of fermentation knowledge connecting a Neolithic pot to every glass on every table in the world tonight. So the next time someone hands you a drink, feel the full weight of what you're holding. That glass connects you through an unbroken chain of curiosity, ritual, and survival, all the way back to a hunter-gatherer in a cave 13,000 years ago, tasting something strange and uncertain, and finding it, against all reasonable expectation, good. And behind that, 10 million years of monkeys in the forest, following the smell of something sweet and slightly wrong, and choosing every time to go toward it. We didn't stumble into alcohol by accident. We grew toward it, the way a plant grows toward light.